So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted that we have with us Robyn Andrews, who's CEO at Teacher Success Platform. So, Robyn, thank you for spending a little time with us. And if you could introduce yourself, TSP, what you do, and how you help people, that would be wonderful.
Thanks, Chris. It's really great to be here, actually, and lovely to meet you this morning. So the Teacher Success Platform is working to solve teacher recruitment and retention, which is probably fairly widely known as a significant issue.
Yes,
And it's important to understand that teacher shortages actually do impact people in society, typically who are already in a disadvantaged position. So, it's a real equity issue that we're trying to solve. And the way we're trying to solve it is we're using technology that we've developed over 10 years of research, really. The evidence base was developed by my co-founders, Professor Robert Classon, Liz Maxwell, and Jade Rushby, and through the University of York.
right.
Um, and they've basically identified this set of personal characteristics, professional behaviours that will determine your success in the teaching profession. And of course, if you're successful, you're more likely to stay. You're going to have greater
Yes,
job satisfaction. So the way we do it is we use animation and create realistic job previews, scenario situation judgment tests. So we use those for screening people who may want to move into the profession or apply for a teaching role, and scenario-based learning. So this is all based all online. SaaS solution, software as a service. So it's really cost effective as well, the way that we do it. And then alongside that kind of end user experience, we're providing a data set to organizations so they can monitor the progress, whether that's a teacher training organization or a school. They can sort of keep an eye on how people are feeling about their
yes,
role as a teacher. And we're continually developing our tools at the moment. We've got an AI teacher coach under development, and I think that's a really exciting opportunity. I know it's the hot topic, AI. Every,
absolutely.
everyone's doing it. But the opportunity for us is to provide teachers, particularly those early career teachers or training teachers, with on-demand support. We know teachers are really overwhelmed in the
Yeah,
profession. The workload's huge. So and that one-to-one mentoring and support from colleagues is so vital to these early career teachers. Well, probably all teachers, to be honest, but
yes,
particularly those early years. 30% of teachers don't stay in the profession beyond 5 years. So that's the first problem to solve. Make sure we get them through that first 5 years so that they can go on and train the next generation
yes,
effectively. So it's really a cyclical problem. But the opportunity is of the AI teacher coaches, that kind of on-demand support that supplements mentoring from experienced teachers.
wonderful.
And probably gives teachers what feels like a bit of a safe environment to test their thinking, get sort of non-judgmental feedback from the machine. Although, of course, it leverages large language models, so it's kind of has a really natural language response. So it can
Yep,
feel exactly like you're conversing with a human. I mean, everyone's using ChatGPT, so you know what I'm talking about.
yes, yes.
But equally, from that, the opportunity is there for us to kind of gather more knowledge about the particular challenges teachers are facing. What questions are they asking the teacher coach, and what development tools can we create that are going to help teachers with that? So that's a really UK based assessment of what we're at, but we do work globally. We've got customers in Australia. We do a lot of work in Africa, Kenya, Morocco, and they have unique challenges themselves.
Yes.
So, a solution like the teacher coach needs to have a low bandwidth option so that that's accessible in remote and rural locations where that kind of support is even more important. So.
Amazing. And there was some amazing stuff. I was just looking at your website earlier, and there really is a shortfall or potential shortfall of teachers both now and moving forward. And I picked up from the stats, it's sort of the gap is widening if we don't do something about it.
Absolutely, and you'll have heard, the Labour announcement that they want to recruit 6,500 more teachers when if they're elected, and that's a huge number, and that they've failed to hit recruitment targets, year after
Yes.
year. So I don't know where they think they're going to get those teachers from, but what I would be saying to the shadow Minister for Education is, make sure you're recruiting the right people into the training, because that's
Yes.
where you can have the most impact. Don't waste. It's expensive to train a teacher. I know, actually, because our youngest daughter's just gone through teacher training in Leeds, and it's such a great experience. It's hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Oh,
a
yeah.
lot of effort's gone into supporting her through that, and we want to hold people like her in the profession, and make sure
100%.
they're there after 5 years.
It's absolute it's a music to my ears in many ways. Working with businesses locally, primarily in Yorkshire, but we know this with my colleagues across the UK and probably across the world, that one of the biggest challenges every business faces right now, yeah, is finding and then keeping great people. And clearly it's true in education as every others, and we have personally specifically embedded a recruitment process within our business to help people both find, but then the key part of keep.
Yeah.
And so we're doing it as a more manpower intensive process. So we sort of mentor people directly, but that ability to do this now in a online way, in a leverage way, sounds wonderful for the education industry as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And equally, I think you make a really important point that, that what we're doing is applicable across most sectors, really.
Yes.
The type of personality profiling that we're using has been used in the health sector for years.
Yep.
It's been quite an intensive, time-consuming manual process. There is the opportunity for us to develop our automation and bring it into that sector as well. That could run across social care, for example, where it's so important to get the right people into that profession
Yes.
as well. Police and defence is another example
Yes.
of going there. There are key characteristics that are going to fit this profession,
Yep.
more than likely dictate that people will stay, and
Yep.
we have a cost-effective, efficient way of doing it. And our ambition would be to apply our knowledge more widely across a range of sectors. But yeah, teaching is our passion.
Yep.
And Professor Clason at the moment, Rob's working on a new significant piece of research around retention. He's
Great.
kind of done the work on screening and recruitment. Now we've really got to work on
Yes.
the retention piece. And so he's researching that now through his role with the University of Oxford, actually.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so it'll be really interesting to see what comes out of that and how we can apply technology to helping solve that problem.
Great. Well, obviously be great to keep monitoring how you're getting on and learning more as you go. But if we start, Robyn, if it's okay, but talk a little bit about your background, how you got into business and why this particular one.
Yeah, well, it's quite a boring story. Now, I'm an accountant by background, actually, but I probably, after those early years working in professional services, moved into business. She worked in London early in my career, did my OE. I'm from New Zealand. So
Brilliant.
did a couple of years here in my early 20s, then went back to New Zealand to raised family, and have returned here for my what I call mature OE with my husband, who's English.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so during my career, I've become involved in economic development, and I was sort of in the corporate services management job within an economic development agency. But what that did is expose me to a significant economic development initiative, which is trying to commercialize the research from universities.
Right. Yes.
And that it's something that really does require government intervention and support. It's quite
Yeah.
hard to get that deep knowledge and research out of universities and into the marketplace.
Yes.
So that's a tough thing to do. So I'd seen that done quite a lot through a funder and a supporter of that activity. And when we came to the UK, it was something we wanted to look more into doing. And I say we because my husband works in this field as well.
Yep.
He's working with technology out of Durham actually at the moment. So, maybe you can talk to him next.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so this opportunity came up looking for a CEO, someone to commercialize it from the research that had been done by York. I had two teachers for parents, and obviously had the daughter going into teacher training. My parents had left teaching when I was in my teens, and I had this vague awareness of, the fact that you get to a point in teaching and you just can't do it anymore. I think that's the sense I got from them.
Yes.
Um, so I was just really curious about those factors actually. And the role I'd been doing in the UK before that was in a training organization, a psychology training organization actually. It was really new field for me. But our research is founded in educational psychology and motivational psychology. And I'd noticed this recruitment problem of how do when you're trying to put people into training for psychotherapy, that you've got to be really careful about who you're putting in there because
Yes.
they're messing with people's heads, so to speak.
100%. Yeah.
And it's a time-consuming process. And if you recruit the wrong people into the training, this is a very accountant process, like
Yeah.
analysis of the problem that I had of going, it's an expensive thing to be doing. And if you get it wrong, it's really expensive because now
Yes.
you've got someone in the program who you can't really keep in anyway. So it was all of that that made me interested in the TSP opportunity in particular and going, I can see the way it can apply in other situations, but equally identify this problem you're trying to solve in the education sector and the way it's going to make, if we get it right or improve it, it's going to make such a difference to outcomes for learners, basically.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, absolutely wonderful. It really fascinating. You mentioned the OEs, and it really hit a chord with me because we went on an effective OE when in late 20s. And I
Yeah.
remember meeting, and we were in Nepal on a whitewater rafting trip, and there was a Kiwi accountant who was about 26,
Yeah.
and I remember him, and it was really fascinating because I said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I'm doing my OE because no one would employ me in New Zealand unless I had one." So
Oh,
he
really?
literally said he was trying to get jobs as an accountant. He was trained, and they said, "Well, we won't employ you because you'll do your OE, you'll work for us for a year, then you'll go away." And he said, "Well, I don't want to go away. I've no interest in doing that." So he literally had to do the trip just so he could go back to New Zealand to get a job, which which is a total opposite of over here. I mean, when we went, this is quite a long time ago, as you could probably tell. It was nuts, the idea of going away and quitting your job and going away for 18 months. It was just like the most stupid thing anyone here could think of. So that's fascinating. But a great example of different, you know.
It's so valuable, though. I mean,
Oh yeah.
accountants, we don't come out of the system the most well-rounded people, to be honest. So, oh, that's probably a bit, I think it's changed a bit since I did my training, which is some time ago now. But yeah, yeah, you're learning a very niche, specific skill, and New Zealand's a long way away from the rest of the world. And I think if you haven't traveled, you really can exist in a bit of a bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think that's true in different countries, even different parts of a country. It can be true. So was this the sort of thing you always perceived yourself as probably ending up doing, Robyn, or did you have other plans when you were younger?
So I spent most of my 20s saying if I was still an accountant by the time I was 30, someone should shoot me. But once you're in there, it's quite tough to get out. Probably as a younger person had all sorts of fanciful ideas about what I would do. Did I, when you get into your 40s and you're still an accountant and I've been in a sort of 2 IC role really for quite a long time now. The
Yeah.
accountant's often the second in a business. So and I asked myself for a long time, do I really want to be that front person, that person who's really holding it all? It's quite easy as the CFO or even operations manager,
Yes.
COO, which is
Yeah.
the role I would have had previously, to go, I'm doing my best, but it's all on the CEO really. So it's definitely pushing me out of my comfort zone, I have to
Brilliant.
say.
Brilliant. I think I think that's so important, really, because staying in our comfort zone is it doesn't give us any room for growth, really, does it? Let's be honest. And so, looking at the organisation itself, what are some of the biggest challenges you faced so far in getting to this point?
Well, it's been a real leap of faith for in particular my colleague who's left her sort of fairly nice, secure role in a university to take on the startup role, and
Yes.
we're capital raising at the moment, and that's probably going to be ongoing for a
Yeah.
while. But
Yeah.
it's the uncertainty is a challenge. I think also making sure finding that path to market really for solutions that are a little bit disruptive, they're new. That's a lot of work, and
Yes.
I'm not a natural salesperson. And I don't have a lot of experience in that selling side. So I think, and building relationships. So, it's been wonderful. University of York have been incredible to work with. I mean, I've worked with other universities on spin outs, and I can tell you they're not all so friendly as the University of York. So that's been great. But
Yes.
equally, we've had some support from Innovate York. I've been involved in a peer-to-peer networking program with some other women running businesses in York, which has been a great way to start to build networks.
Brilliant.
Another organisation that was part of that is working with schools, so that's been a really helpful connection to have. And then I was at York St John University this week in the Enterprise Centre, meeting with Emma there who runs it, and gosh, she's so friendly, and there's just such a collaborative spirit there.
Wonderful.
Yeah, really encouraging. So I've probably talked about the positives rather than the challenges. I think with the startup, it all feels like a challenge, to be honest.
Yes. Yeah, I can tell you this. There are so many, aren't there, that you can highlight. I guess, but no, I mean, I've had some dealings in and around the university, the University of York, in terms of several of my clients are based in some of their business startup areas. I've worked also with a couple of businesses actually locally that have done that, taken that research from the university. I think one from Leeds, to be fair, but have now set up and established really effective businesses and are growing very well. And as you say, breaching that gap between the research side and the commercial side is, I can imagine, very, very difficult. It's not something I've done personally, but I can certainly see. And it, because I mean, for lots of different reasons, which I'm sure we could discuss for a long time. But there's a probably a move from there's clearly an evidence-based process in research, but things like marketing and sales are very much an emotional process, and I guess it's turning that. There's logic in there too, but one of the things we do a lot of sales training, and one of the things we say is 80% of any decision, but certainly a sales decision, is emotional.
Yeah.
20% is logical. You need the logic because there's got to be a reason to do it. But if we don't engage people at an emotional level, then we're unlikely to take them through a buying process. So fascinating.
Yeah.
And you've talked about the support you've had and the positive things so far. And what are some of the biggest learnings you've had about business in general? That's obviously not just right now, but previously too.
Gosh, I thought I should have thought through the answer to this question, because I'm sure there's a very long list of learnings. I think it's continual learning. Definitely is probably my biggest learning.
Yes.
Is like, yeah, it's realizing that you're never going to know it all.
Yep.
Certainly coming back to England later in life, at a kind of senior management level, was challenging. I think, yeah. So the learning from that was relationships and the value of those, because then it makes life so much easier when you go, I need some advice on something, or I know someone who can do.
Yep.
It really is about networking. When you do that whole Belbin profile thing,
Yes.
and one of the categories is a resource investigator, and you go there. I think when you're in business leadership, or a lot of what you've got to be doing is going, where are the resources that I need
Yep.
to get my business to the next phase or get that job done. So and really those resources come through relationships. It's
Yes.
nuts, but it's so much easier to start with someone or someone who's been recommended than to put an ad in the paper.
Yes. Yeah, it's that having those connections, isn't it? Absolutely. Who can help me? It's very, very people oriented approach, isn't it? To who can help me. But that's often the shortcut to
Yeah.
getting knowledge and information and support we need. As you say, you put an advert in the paper, then you've got to go through the whole recruitment process, the training, the boarding. So finding people that can support us effectively is really, really key.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be that relationship build piece for someone who's moved over here, doesn't have the professional networks. And then you've got a pandemic, right? You go, oh, that's tricky now. There's a limit to what you can do really in terms of relationship development online. LinkedIn, it's amazing, but it's not building that really authentic
No,
connection. So as networking events become more prevalent again, and you've got to adjust your mindset, don't you, of going, actually, I need to go and actually meet that person. You've always got a choice to say, let's do it on Zoom or Teams,
yep.
or get in the car, or get on a train or a bus, or get walk, cycle, whatever, get and go. And you kind of go, oh, but that time, commute times, I'm going to lose that time. But it's usually worth it, I think.
I think so. I think it is worth that sort of conscious thought about, because you'll get the other bunch of people that go, I have to meet everybody and at all times, and because that's how they prefer, and it's understanding the leverage of there's a whole bunch of people, maybe the first meeting would be okay online with a view to then saying, look, the best thing we can do is sit down, have a coffee together, and let's do that, and look at the leverage capability of the online process compared to the likely increased conversion rate of meeting somebody and building report at a much more close level when you're with somebody. And
Yeah.
it's a fine balance, I think, to work. But I think the constant review of how well is that working, is that Zoom call working, is that telephone call working, is the LinkedIn working to here. But once we've got to here, perhaps we should be sitting around a table, or and having a coffee, or doing whatever it takes to build better rapport. um
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Really, you're probably aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm just keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's been the biggest influences on you?
Oh, well, I feel like it'd be wrong to say my husband, but we do talk a lot about business,
A
and
lot of people do.
yeah, it's
I and I think it's great, because we need that support. I think if we're not naming some people that are really close to us, there's potentially a challenge. Not being supported domestically is quite a challenge, I think, when running and growing and establishing and then growing a business is so tough.
yeah, yeah, and that day-to-day conversation is what you need. But equally, someone with a bit of distance is really helpful. And Holly Arden, who was running the peer-to-peer mentoring group in York, she's a useful sounding board. And
Great.
but I think there are lots of strong coaches out there, aren't there, and sort of all of the online access you can get to advice and books and things is prolific. I was just reading Peter Thiel's From Zero to, what is that called, that book? Um, it's a really interesting one around startup
Oh, great.
fallacy, really. Yeah, but I tend to get a lot of stuff from books, really.
Brilliant. And the thing I found personally is, the whole journey at startup through sort of establishment, survival, and then takeoff. There's such a mindset change through that process, and it's being conscious of that, and being able to modify and develop our mindset from what needs to be a very scarcity based mindset when we start. Every penny counts, every decision could be the last. There's all these sorts of things. But once we actually get momentum, it's then being able to look at an investment mindset to say, well, I need to feel more comfortable in investing to get a return. And if I don't, then I may hold back the growth of an organization. So the mindset that was useful at the start, often we've seen quite regularly, hold people back from growing as effectively as they could, because I've got one of my longest clients is one of my best friends now. I mean, he's got very, very large group of businesses, sort of in the multiple tens of millions of pounds, and he will still struggle spending much money. It was like, I can't spend that much. You can't spend that much. It's like, and it's like, but that's a lot of money. Well, compared to what? Compared to a 15 plus million turnover business, it's not a lot of money. Compared to where you were 10 years ago, it is a lot of money. And it's understanding that sort of mindset. We see that quite regularly, and therefore being able to talk things through with people around us, and having that sort of external view as well. That's interesting. It's interesting that you feel like that, but what's holding you back? So, but the constant learning is so key. Every successful person we've interviewed, I think pretty much without exception, there's one or two actually, to be fair, talk about constant learning and lifetime learning. And certainly the most successful people I've ever met or heard, that's the common factor, is that constant learning.
Absolutely.
And
And when it comes to accounts, sorry, thinking about that those spend decisions, that would certainly be a fairly recent learning of, the funding or revenue environment is always subject to change. And I'm not the most conservative of accountants, but it was certainly a reminder to go, someone's got to be holding those purse strings
yes,
fairly tightly. Yeah.
I mean, the key thing is being able to make the educated decision to take the, one of the things I learned very early on in my business career is where is there's a direct correlation in my belief is direct correlation between risk and profit. So,
Okay.
if you don't want to risk anything, then you're probably not going to make much money, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But, so I'm not suggesting we go totally risk crazy, but it's understanding that if this is risky, it probably means there's money to be made in it. It's the stuff that isn't. The standard stuff is, yes, you can make, but it's very much a very, very small margin business typically.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Absolutely. We've known it for years. That's why we've got famous sayings. And speaking of which, are there any favorite sayings you find yourself using on a regular basis?
Um, no, not that immediately spring to mind. Probably if I stopped and thought hard enough, something might, but
Cool.
no.
Don't relax. If one comes to mind, please shout out. I love learning different phrases. I've learned so many great ones, having interviewed people, and yes, some very very profound sayings. And I have them. So I interviewed one guy, and there's lots of I, I've heard. In fact, I use quite a lot of phrases about not too worrying about the past too much and really focusing on the future. So the value of the past is only from to learn from it, not to set the future. The past isn't the future. And he put it very succinctly. He just said, well, the saying I had was, don't look back because you're not going in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. That's probably definitely a good mindset to have, isn't it?
I think so, because that's the challenge. A lot of people, will start to create patterns historically and say, well, that means that, and it doesn't have to mean that. But yeah,
one that comes to mind, probably, it's not a saying, but it's more of a philosophy of, and I am slightly borrowing it from my husband because he's all in favor of hiring lazy people.
Interesting.
And his rationale for this is, if you hire lazy people, they're more motivated to find a better way. They don't want to do laborious,
Absolutely.
time-consuming work. They will apply their mind to the workload and come up with the most efficient way to do it. It's like, yeah.
Love it. Hiring lazy people. I 100%. And funnily enough, to support that slightly differently, but for very much support, I heard a lady called Jennifer Byrne speak last year, and she was the CTO at Microsoft. So she CTO, yeah, CTO at Microsoft. And one of the things she said, which really was really fascinating, especially for the sort of business owners, owner managed business that I work with, was that she said in the US, when they're recruiting C-suite executives, they actively test them on their ability not to do things. My understanding being their job is to get other people to do things, not to be doing it themselves.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. That's really interesting.
It's really fascinating when you look at owner-managed, owner-led businesses, founder-led businesses. We spend a lot of time at the start. This whole point of scarcity, it's cheaper if I do it myself. That's an okay mentality to have. But if we don't ultimately move into that more, right, who else can do it? Let's be lazy. Let's find quicker, easier ways of doing it, and potentially also through other people. Then, yeah, again, we can limit growth. So that's something that stuck with me.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
The other thing she said, actually, the two things, I mean, she said loads of really interesting stuff that I really found interesting. It's sort of relevant slightly to what we're talking about is she said teams are purely sort of constructs. They're not really what they are is a whole bunch of one-to-one relationships with people. And we mustn't lose sight of that when we talk about a team, that's absolutely great. but we've got to understand within a team there is all those interpersonal relationships that have to be healthy for the team to thrive. And I found that very interesting and very, very true. There is a calculation actually that I must dig up at some point, because the number of relationships in a team grows exponentially with the size of the team, which probably sounds obvious, but it means when you've got sort of 10 people, you've got 121 relationships going on or something, and therefore helping people maintain healthy relationships is going to be absolutely key to both growth of the team, but also things like, I guess, people staying in a team.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's so true, isn't it? And as a manager, I think you spend so much of your time sort of just monitoring the
Yeah.
status of a lot of those relationships, obviously the ones between you and your teammates, but between each of the team members as well. And it's it's a lot of work, but you're
Yes.
certainly singing the song of the last organization I worked for, which was a relationship support organization, specifically couples,
Right.
but it applies equally in the workplace that
Yes.
we know that people, and God, really starting in a minute, but if you're in a healthy relationship, your life outcomes are so much they're greatly
Yes.
improved over someone who's not in a healthy relationship.
Yes.
So, I'm sure that your performance at work probably is dictated. Well, I think we all know, don't we, that your satisfaction at work is actually about how much you're enjoying working with the people that you're working with.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, and I think it's still true that most people give the relationships with their managers and their peers as the main reason that they ultimately will leave a team or a job, as opposed
Yeah.
to things like salary or reward or anything else. It's that relationships that we have. So important that we focus on making sure they're strong.
Yeah, absolutely. And it applies equally to the teaching profession. I have had a teacher say to me, really, it's a tough gig, but it's if you've got colleagues that you can have a drink with at the end of the day, or blow off steam with
Yes.
over a coffee or a cup of tea,
Yep.
it makes all the difference really to.
Absolutely. I guess that's where that support and that peer-to-peer support comes. If you don't have that, given it is such a tough gig, and I do know several personal friends that have both unfortunately left the profession, but also one or two that have joined the profession, and I know how tough it is
Yeah.
nowadays. It's yeah. So I'm keen to know, Robyn, what you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far.
um well, yeah, that's interesting. Having done 3 or 4 years in, the psychology organization and worked with some very self-aware people. Um, what have I learned about myself? Well, I appreciate the encouragement probably to, push out of my comfort zone.
Yes.
I've probably always felt I'm fairly tenacious, but I'm more comfortable in that slightly backseat
Yes.
supporting type role. So, a level of discomfort in the leadership, yeah, the open leadership role. Um, yeah, I think there's a lot still of growth that I need to do.
Yep.
um,
True of us all.
um, Yeah, I don't know what else I would say about that without getting too deep. Um, yeah, but it's probably the same things you hear. There's just continual learning to do, and you've got to push yourself. It's hard to imagine not working.
Okay. Yeah.
And but it is sort of the longer we're here, we've got 5 kids in New Zealand and now 3 grandchildren. So
Wow.
there's some sort of contemplation around going, will there be a time?
Yes.
By the time the grandchildren are teenagers, there'll be no point trying to live in the same country with them. Hopefully they'll be coming this way.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Let's hope so. Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we do a lot of, in fact, we're going to be doing after this interview, is um, aligning aligning the business goals to the personal goals of its leaders.
Mm.
Because the main purpose of an owner-led, founder-led business is to give the owners and founders the lifestyle they choose to have. There's a lot of great other stuff, and clearly you've got a very strong purpose, but that's part of this purpose, is to give people the lifestyle. And very few people when I meet them actually have got that part mapped out so that they can make sure the business is grown in the right way to support that. And that's not just financial, and it often isn't financial. It's more about how much time it allows people to have out of the business to do family and friend things, or even the structure of the business so it can be run remotely from different parts of the world.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, so few people that I meet actually have thought through that, so they've got real clarity on what the next 3 to 5 years looks like, so that they can make sure they're moving the business and growing the business in the direction that delivers that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's been a focus for me in at least my last two roles, very much about ensuring that I'm making myself redundant, continually working to
Right.
make myself redundant. It's partly because of both of them I've left on quite a long sort of notice period, and yeah. But even so, that as the manager or the leader in a team, you've got to be making sure everyone else in your team's enabled to function without you. That's the goal. But it feels like you never quite get there.
Well, I mean, I still find the idea of actively making ourselves redundant is opposite to most people's mindsets. It is this idea of being indispensable is equals valuable. Well, it may be valuable, but it fixes you into that position for life. And being able to, as you rightly say, systemize, delegate to be able to move to the next level is so key. Because otherwise we start to hold the business back without a doubt.
Totally agree with that. I'm 100% believer in 5 years and move on.
And move on. Brilliant. So looking at the future specifically, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
So the future for us, we're definitely on a 5-year plan at the moment in terms of, we've got 4 really startups in our portfolio. And we run one each, and then CEOs in the other 2 that are at various stages of their journey.
Brilliant.
So it's bringing those all 4 to maturity. I'm saying that, and I go, oh, there's the 4th one's very early, and I go, unless one or both of us get a bit more energy and effort into that one, it probably won't go anywhere. But so we need to do that. But it's maturing those, maybe hopefully having one exit maybe out of the 4 in that time, or being close to. I do think basically the vision for them all is a build and sell strategy. So significant progress over 5 years to then ultimately go, is there one here that we want to keep running for a while, or do we want to go again? I mean, would I be in 5 years, 10 years saying we're probably too old for startup now? It's hard work, right? And it's definitely a different ball game when you're used to sort of working in a much bigger team, bit more resource. Startups. It's exciting, but it's hard.
Yes, without doubt.
Who knows whether the energy levels will be there, or will we be sort of perhaps more like yourself, coaching, supporting other people into their startups.
I think there's a lot of value in that, and things like I work with 1 or 2 organizations of business angels and angel investors, where we can use our. I guess it's a bit like grandkids, isn't it? It's you can have your fun with them, but then you can give them back at the end of the day.
I like it. Yeah, totally. That's what they call consultancy.
Absolutely. Yeah, yes, indeed. Yeah, absolutely. You can
all care, no responsibility, right?
Absolutely. And we earn the right to do that by doing what we do. So yeah, maybe that's the future. And I'm keen to know what you'd say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now, Robyn.
Do it.
Love it. Bang on.
Yeah, I know that's a bit simplistic, but absolutely, yeah.
Wonderful. That's it. It's as we said, that there are lots of challenges to it, but I think for the people, I guess, interestingly enough, with the right there isn't a right or wrong, but there must be certain characteristics. I'm pretty sure there are, of people that coming back to literally what you do, there will be characteristics of, in general, most successful people. We use probably a different behavioral profiling tool, and we've seen that every profile is capable of growing a successful business without a shadow of a doubt, but there's probably a more standard profile or set of broad profile that gives you the best chance of doing it, probably without losing your mind. I would imagine that perhaps that's the caveat.
Yeah, I think that uncertainty, you've got to be someone who can cope with a high level
Yes.
of uncertainty and dynamism in a situation. And,
Yes.
that definitely say that it's necessary, and have that continual learning mindset,
Yeah.
obviously. But equally, you've got to be someone who's a bit arrogant, I think, and determined enough of your own thinking that you can cut through all of the pushback and noise that you get as well.
100%. I heard a guy speak quite a long time ago. It was I think he was badged as a dot-com millionaire type guy, but it was an interesting guy. And he was relatively young, but he asked the audience, he said, "What's the best age to be a CEO? What would be the best age?" And there was like, well, 40, 30, whatever. And he said, "I think it's 9 years old." 9 years old. He said, "You haven't had any effect. You've still got massive dreams. I come over. You've still got massive dreams. You've got great capacity for fun, and you don't take no for an answer." And I thought, yeah, okay. I think sometimes we would benefit from being a bit 9 year oldish every now and again.
Absolutely,
The
yeah.
persistence of wanting an ice cream of a 9 year old is absolutely, just employ a load of 9 year olds to be telemarketers or whatever, and
Yeah.
you're on a winner, I reckon. Um,
Yeah,
Brilliant.
good idea. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thought, because it's like, I mean, one thing we often say, unfortunately, is we say that um, uh, unfortunately in business in general, is most people reduce their dreams to fit their reality rather than increase their reality to fit their dreams. And I think that goes back to that 9 year old. When you're nine, there isn't anything you can't achieve. And I think
Yeah,
that, just sitting as a 9 year old every now and again and say, well, if we knew we couldn't fail, what would we do? Is a great
yeah,
question to have on a regular basis, because that's what we should do.
absolutely.
And just
Yeah,
do our best not to fail, but understand failure is always potential, but failure isn't final. It's just the next stage to success, in my opinion.
agreed. And that's why you need to adhere to that business cycle. Get out after 5 years, because after 5 years, you'll feel like you've tried everything,
Yeah.
and you may not have the mindset capacity to go, yep, but what's changed in the environment that means trying that same thing again might have a different outcome this time.
Yes.
Maybe some people have the ability to reinvigorate their thinking sufficiently, but my general observation would be that people tend to get a bit stuck after.
They talk a lot about the sort of hockey stick curve, don't they? And you do the hockey stick, and then we start to plateau. And unless we can hockey stick again, then that's the right time to.
Yeah,
And
stagnant. Yeah,
some teams, organizations, teams do that, reinvent and reinvigorate, but many don't. You're right, and then there is the downward path, which is a shame.
mm.
And finally, Robyn, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do so?
um, yeah, what would be the best advice I'd give an 18? I don't know. I'm not a person who really looks back and wishes for change, but maybe do a bit more study, probably. Do something alongside the accounting. I've studied in maturity though, so and I think that's a good option to go back and learn some more now. So I don't know. Might be something about contraception. I'd have a few less kids.
Fantastic. Well, those two
Probably want to
very.
edit that out.
Oh no, no. Well, we could do so if you choose, but we could try to anyway. We're not, but whatever works for you. But heck, who knows? It's just it's an interesting step. But I mean, when you said about just more study, I know the founder of our organization, who's probably the most successful person I know personally. He, since the age of about 16, 17, has read a book a week.
Right. Yeah.
And that was one thing. He was lucky enough to see a guy called Jim Rohn, speak many years ago. And one of the things he said is you can't, what was the right word? He said you can't out earn your learning. That
Yeah.
makes sense. You can't out earn your learning. So the more you learn, the more you earn.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So Brad
Yeah.
took it upon himself just to say, right, I'm going to learn as much about everything on the things I want to as I can to be as knowledgeable and be more knowledgeable than everyone else around me, which has proven to be very successful. So wonderful, wise words. So, Robyn, it's been really fascinating and really delightful talking to you. Thank you so much for your time. And for anyone watching that would like to get in touch with you or your business, what would be the best way to do that?
Drop me an email, find me on LinkedIn, Robyn with a Y .andrews at teachersuccess.co.uk.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And it'd be great to swing by in another sort of 6, 12 months and just see how things are developing, if that's okay. But for now, thank you so much for your time.
Sounds great. Lovely to meet you, Chris. Thanks
And
very
you.
much.